This intelligent woman married 2 English princes and became the first female ambassador. The Queen defeated the Scots, won the respect of the court and the love of the people. But all this was forgotten by her husband, who cut her out of his life by loving another. Neither he nor society forgave her for not being able to bear an heir. Today we are going to talk about Catherine of Aragon, the daughter of the famous Spanish Queen Isabella of Castile, who inherited her character. From childhood, Catherine knew that her destiny was to rule England. Born on 16 December 1485, she was the last child of Isabella and Ferdinand of Aragon. She had 3 older sisters and a brother. Young Catherine's character was largely shaped by her mother, who was known for her fiery temper and stubbornness. Catherine's childhood came at a crucial time for Spain. It was a time of great geographical discoveries, including the voyages of Christopher Columbus, which brought wealth to the country and made it one of the most powerful nations. The reign of Isabella and Ferdinand also saw the rise of the Spanish Inquisition, which began a campaign of religious persecution. At the end of the 15th century, Spain began to unite into a single state. The new Spain created by Catherine's parents was strong and prosperous. As a result, the offspring of Isabella and Ferdinand were considered the most valuable assets on the marriage market. Little Catherine was no exception. Isabella went to great lengths to give her children an excellent education. They were taught by the best minds of the Renaissance, and the program was impressive. Latin, history, literature, philosophy, law, and theology. The famous scholar Erasmus of Rotterdam later spoke highly of Catherine, noting her erudition. In the female classes, Isabella's daughters were taught dancing, etiquette, needlework, and housekeeping. At a very young age, Catherine found a suitor, Prince Arthur, heir to the throne of England, the son of Henry VII and Elizabeth of York. The engagement took place when she was 3, and she was to go to England at the age of 14. Arthur and Catherine exchanged regular letters in Latin. However, before she arrived in England, Catherine knew no English. Her arrival, planned for 1499, was delayed by family tragedy. First her brother Juan died, then her sister Isabella. But the wedding was not to be postponed. In 1501 the bride travelled to England. On arrival, Henry VII, contrary to Spanish tradition, wanted to see his daughter-in-law before the wedding, and Catherine had to get used to the new rules of the English court. The wedding of Arthur and Catherine took place on 14 November 1501 in St. Peter's Cathedral in London. The girl was led to the altar by 10-year-old Henry, the youngest son of Henry VII, the future King Henry VIII. The marriage was a lavish affair. After the ceremony, the newlyweds travelled to Ludlow Castle, where Arthur was to serve as Prince of Wales. Catherine had to adapt to her new life, and she took up the study of languages, English, French, and even Welsh. One of the most contentious issues in Catherine and Henry's marriage was whether her marriage to Arthur had been consummated. Catherine insisted that Arthur had left her a virgin and that she had not fulfilled her marital duties. However, many courtiers argued that the marriage was consummated, although Catherine did not become pregnant during their short time together. Unfortunately, Arthur's health deteriorated rapidly and he fell ill, probably from sweating. According to some accounts, Catherine also contracted the disease but recovered. Arthur died on 2 April 1502, leaving Catherine a widow at the age of 17. After Arthur's death, her position at court remained uncertain. Catherine's promised dowry had not yet been paid in full. Catherine's parents hoped that Henry VII would help arrange an engagement for their son, but the king was slow to make a decision, waiting for Isabella and Ferdinand to fulfill their promises. Henry VII did not want to spend money to support Catherine and her court. Special permission was also needed from the Pope for Catherine to marry Henry, as she was his brother's wife, and they were considered close relatives. Permission was granted despite controversy over whether her marriage to Arthur was valid. In 1503 Elizabeth of York died, and Henry VII even considered marrying Catherine, but Isabella of Castile was against it. She soon died herself, leaving Catherine in an even more difficult situation. After Isabella's death, Catherine was left with little support, as her father Ferdinand was the only one who could help her. Henry VII, who was not interested in an alliance with the Spanish, was looking for new allies. Catherine had to wait for the king's decision, and her financial situation became critical. She had to sell some of her jewelry to make a decent living and to keep her servants, as Henry VII had stopped funding her maintenance. She hoped that Ferdinand would still pay the second part of the dowry, and that the marriage to Henry VIII would take place. In 1507, thanks to her father's efforts, Catherine raised her status at court and became the first female ambassador in European history to represent Spain's interests in England. It is not known how long her efforts would have lasted had Henry VII not died in 1509. His son, who became king the next day, immediately expressed his desire to marry his brother's widow. They were married on 11 June of that year, and Catherine became Queen of England. Their first years together were very happy ones. Catherine and Henry loved each other sincerely, and the king was delighted with his wife. The people of England also loved Catherine for her intelligence, wisdom, determination, and beauty. She had beautiful red hair, blue eyes, and a graceful figure. The court became a magnet for aristocrats and artists, and both enjoyed dancing, music, hunting, and other entertainments. Henry VIII eagerly awaited the birth of an heir. In the same year, 1509, Catherine became pregnant and unfortunately miscarried in January 1510, much to the dismay of both her husband and herself. But she soon became pregnant again and gave birth to a son on 1 January 1511. The parents were overjoyed and thanked the saints for the event, and Henry organized a splendid jousting tournament. Unfortunately, their little prince lived only 3 months, and his sudden death left Catherine in deep despair. Henry tried to support his wife, as infant mortality was quite high in those days. In the years that followed, Catherine took an active part in politics. She believed that Spain and England should unite against France, with whom both countries were in constant conflict. In 1513, England declared war on France, and Henry VIII went on the campaign, leaving Catherine as regent. At the same time, King James IV of Scotland, husband of Henry's sister Margaret, was attacking the English from the north. Catherine, who was pregnant, not only helped plan the defense, but also traveled north to support the troops. Soon there was news of an English victory under Thomas Howard. James IV had been killed in battle. Catherine sent Henry his bloody clothes as a symbol of victory. Henry returned from France in triumph, but his conquests were insignificant. Sad news awaited him at home. Catherine had miscarried again, this time a boy. In 1514, they suffered another loss when Catherine had another stillborn son. In 1515, Catherine became pregnant again, and Henry insisted that she look after her health. By this time, the king may have begun to take an interest in one of his ladies-in-waiting, Bessie Blount. On 18 February 1516, Princess Mary was born, and Henry was overjoyed, although he still hoped for a male heir. But Catherine was already in her 30s and time was running out. Henry negotiated a new alliance with France and agreed to Mary's betrothal to the French Dauphin. The marriage contract stipulated that if the Dauphin had no sons, the throne would pass to Princess Mary. Henry secretly hoped that he would still have an heir, and that this clause would not have to be honored, as he was opposed to a woman on the English throne. In 1518, Catherine became pregnant again, but in November another baby girl was born and died only hours later. This was Catherine's last pregnancy. In 1519, Henry, who had an affair with Bessie Blount, finally became the father of a long-awaited son, who was named Henry Fitzroy. Catherine was humiliated when, in 1525, the king gave this child the title of Duke of Richmond. Although it was not yet a question of recognizing him as an heir, she feared it might be. King Henry VIII, who had developed feelings for Anne Boleyn, one of his wife Catherine of Aragon's ladies-in-waiting, decided to divorce her. He believed that Catherine could not produce an heir and used the dubious argument that their marriage was sinful because of her relationship with his dead brother Arthur. The Pope refused to grant the divorce, and Henry resorted to extreme measures. In 1534, he declared himself head of the Church of England, severing all ties with Rome. This allowed him to divorce Catherine and marry Anne. Catherine did not recognize the divorce, but remained true to her faith and considered herself the rightful queen. Henry, however, stripped her of her royal title, declaring her simply the Dowager Princess of Wales, and even forbidding her to be called queen. He also separated her daughter Mary, declaring her illegitimate. Catherine spent her last years at Kimbolton Castle, suffering from illness and loneliness. She fasted severely, which worsened her health problems. Before she died, she wrote a letter to Henry asking him to look after Mary. Catherine died in 1536 at the age of 50. She was buried in St. Peter's Cathedral, Peterborough, as Princess Dowager of Wales, not Queen of England. Rumours of poisoning persisted for a long time, but the true cause of death remained unknown. The yellow robes of Henry and Anne at the funeral gave rise to different interpretations. To some it was the colour of celebration, to others Spanish mourning. The story of Catherine of Aragon is not only an account of the life of one of the most influential women of her time, but also a vivid example of a woman who fought for her rights and believed in justice. We see how, despite her many trials, she remained steadfast and loyal to her family, and how her fate was intertwined with that of England at a turbulent time in its history. Catherine not only fought for her legitimacy as queen, but also left a legacy that continues to generate interest and debate to this day. If you enjoyed this story and would like to learn more about other important figures in history, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. What other aspects of Catherine of Aragon's life do you think are worth mentioning? Or do you have your own thoughts on how her story has influenced modern society? Share your ideas in the comments below.